Hello and welcome to the ECG interpretation tutorial. I hope you enjoy the video. First of all, let's look at how the ECG is generated. The heart has its own electrical system. This system constantly sends impulses to the heart muscle cells so that they can beat. To be more precise, it is the sinus node that generates these impulses. These electrical signals are then transported to the heart chambers via the AV node and the His bundle. This is followed by the contraction of the heart. An ECG device records this electrical activity and makes it visible to us. For this, however, predetermined electrodes must be applied to the patient's skin. You can find the exact position of these electrodes everywhere on the Internet. For the interpretation of the ECG, it is important to know which electrodes or leads represent certain areas of the heart. Here on this slide the leads of the 12-channel ECG are listed. In short, it can be said that leads 2, 3 and AVF represent the underside of the heart. V1 to V4 on the other hand represent the front wall. Let's look at the whole thing in detail. Here on this slide you can see the heart seen from the front. It has 2 atria and 2 chambers, i.e. ventricles. The sinus node is located close to the right atrium. We now want to look at the electrical activity from the point of view of lead 2. This runs from the right arm to the left foot. When the electrical signal propagates in the direction of the left foot, the ECG device registers a positive wave. However, if the signal runs in the opposite direction, the ECG device will register a negative wave. Good, then let's observe the real spread of the electrical impulses. First, the atria are activated. Here the signal runs towards the tip of the heart, so we can see a small positive wave in the ECG here. When both atria are fully excited, the zero line results again, that is the isoelectric line. Afterwards the excitation of the ventricles begins. In this process, first a part of the ventricular septum is activated. This is done in the direction of the right arm. Therefore we see a small negative wave in the ECG. Now most of the heart muscle mass is electrically stimulated. This is done towards the tip of the heart. For this reason, this results in a large positive wave. Subsequently, further parts of the left ventricle are excited. This is done in the opposite direction. Therefore we see a small negative wave again. Now both ventricles are fully activated. After this depolarization, a regression of the excitation must also occur. This is called repolarization. This happens in the direction of the right arm. However, in this case the electrical signal is reversed so that our ECG device again emits a positive wave. And lo and behold, the ECG is complete. Now we come to the basic components. The waves that have just been mentioned have names, of course. The first positive wave, for example, is called the P wave and so on. All these components are printed on the so-called ECG paper, which is standardized. Here, either 25 mm or 50 mm on the paper correspond to 1 second. This is called the writing speed. The just mentioned P wave thus symbolizes the atrial excitation. In healthy people this P wave is always positive in leads 1 and 2 and always negative in lead AVR. The time in which the electrical signal is transported via the atria to the ventricles is the PR interval. This is usually less than 200 milliseconds. The electrical excitation of the ventricles is characterized by the QRS complex. The Q wave is the first negative wave of the QRS complex. It should not be larger than a quarter of the following R wave. The R wave, on the other hand, becomes larger and larger from leads V1 to about V5. The S wave, on the other hand, becomes smaller and smaller in these leads, so that the R wave becomes larger than the S wave between V2 and V3 or between V3 and V4. Normally no S wave is visible in lead V6. After both ventricles are completely depolarized, we see the ST segment. The point at which the QRS complex merges into the ST segment is called the J point. This point is usually located on the isoelectric line. If the latter is not the case, we speak of an ST segment elevation. Either the elevation happens from the descending branch of the R wave or from the ascending branch of the S wave. The former is typical for a heart attack. The second is more typical of paramyocarditis, that is an inflammation of the pericardium with involvement of the superficial layers of the heart. The ST segment can also run below the isoelectric line. There are three different types which you can see on this slide. In the first type, the ST segment runs towards the isoelectric line. This type can also occur in healthy persons. But the lower two types are an indication that the heart can no longer be supplied with sufficient oxygen. In this case, the ST segment either runs horizontally below the isoelectric line or sinks further. The T wave is usually positive when the QRS complex is also positive. But if the T wave is negative and the QRS complex is positive, this can also be an indication that the heart is no longer being supplied with sufficient oxygen. There are two different types. If you draw a bisector in the T wave, the tip will either run in the direction of the QRS complex or in the middle or to the right. The first type is called a pre-terminal T inversion. The other two types are called terminal T inversion. Terminal T inversions are usually more serious than pre-terminal T inversions. The electrical axis of the heart tells us in which direction the electrical excitation mainly runs. The following variants are often normal: the left variant, the indifference variant and the steep variant. The remaining axes are an indication that either the left or the right ventricle has to do disproportionate work. This can be the case, for example, with high blood pressure. To determine the electrical axis, one must look at the QRS complex in the leads 1, 2 and 3. If the area in the QRS complex is predominantly positive, we note a plus for this lead. But if the area is mainly negative, we note a minus. Afterwards we can easily determine the electrical axis ourselves with the help of this table. Please note that this detailed classification, as you can see here, only takes place in Germany. In English-speaking countries we usually only distinguish between a normal, left and right deviating variant. But I think the German method is better, so only this one is shown here. By the way, the ECG on the right side shows the indifference variant. But there are also special cases. If, for example, in the leads 1, 2 and 3 R and S waves are always the same size, this is the so-called sagittal variant. This can occur with a right heart strain. The same applies to the S1Q3 type. Then you see a deep S wave in lead 1 and a deep Q wave in lead 3. Very good, then let's go into a little more detail. The normal heart rhythm is the sinus rhythm. Here we see in the ECG normal, semicircular and positive P waves in leads 1 and 2. After each P wave a QRS complex appears. If the heart beats in sinus rhythm more than 100 times per minute, this is called sinus tachycardia. But if it beats less than 60 times per minute, it is sinus bradycardia. For example, if the right atrium becomes enlarged due to a heart valve defect, the P wave in the ECG may also become larger. Then the amplitude is more than 0.25 mV. This disease is called P dextroatrial. But if the left atrium enlarges, the P wave widens to more than 100 milliseconds. This disorder is called P sinistro atrial. If both atria are enlarged, the ECG may show all the criteria just mentioned. Maybe we should take a look at the nomenclature at this point. A QRS complex that has no R wave at all is called a QS complex. But the QRS complex can also have two R waves. The larger wave then gets the capital letter. The electrical excitation spreads in the ventricles by means of the ventricular branches. However, these can be damaged by coronary heart disease, for example. This then results in an intraventricular excitation disorder, i.e. a bundle branch block. This results in a broader QRS complex. If the disorder is only partial, the QRS duration is between 110 and 119 milliseconds. If the disturbance is complete, the QRS duration is over 120 milliseconds. Sometimes you can see an M-shaped QRS complex in the ECG as shown on the right side. With a right bundle branch block, such an M-shaped QRS complex typically occurs in the leads V1 and V2. In a left bundle branch block, an M-shaped QRS complex is more likely to occur in V5 and V6. Sometimes it is difficult to distinguish a left bundle branch block from a right bundle branch block. But then you can use a little trick. To do this, you mark the point in the QRS complex in the leads V1 to V6, from which it only goes down to the last S wave. Then you draw a line through the marked points. If this line runs to the left, it is a right bundle branch block. On this slide you can see an example of this. If the line goes to the right, it is a left bundle branch block. A newly occurring left bundle branch block with chest pain is treated like a heart attack until proven otherwise. We had already seen this slide. An ST elevation is a serious problem, because in many cases it indicates that the patient is about to suffer a heart attack. During an infarction, a stenosis occurs in one or more of the coronary arteries. As a result, certain areas of the heart can no longer be supplied with sufficient blood and die. In the ECG, only an ST elevation above 0.1 mV at the J point in at least two adjacent leads corresponds to a significant ST elevation. Only in V2 and V3 higher values must be achieved. If, for example, a significant ST elevation is seen in leads 2, 3 and AVF, ST depression typically occurs in the mirror image leads, i.e. in 1 and AVL. But watch out, not every heart attack is accompanied by ST elevation. With a so-called N-STEMI, the patient suffers a heart attack without you being able to see ST elevations in the ECG. Of course, it also plays a role where the heart attack is located in the heart. On this slide you can see the typical locations. For example, an inferior infarction can be seen in leads 2, 3 and AVF, and an anterior infarction in leads V1 to V4. Heart hypertrophy is the increase in heart muscle mass due to, for example, long-term high blood pressure. So it is by no means always a good thing, but shows us that the heart has to do too much work. When the left ventricle is enlarged, the electrical axis of the heart rotates to the left and the R waves increase in V5 or V6. In addition, the Sokolow-Lyon index can also become positive. We will come to this in a moment. With a right heart enlargement, however, the electrical axis rotates to the right. Sometimes you can also see a right bundle branch block in the ECG. In addition, the R waves in V1 and V2 increase. The Sokolow-Lyon index is actually quite uncomplicated. You can calculate it for the right or left ventricle. On the left side you see the example for the left ventricle and on the right side the example for the right ventricle. We start with the left side. First we look for the largest S wave in the leads V1 and V2 and the largest R wave in the leads V5 and V6 respectively. Then we measure them and add them up. If the sum is more than 3.5 mV, the Sokolow-Lyon index is positive. Let's go to the right side. Here we have to choose the largest R wave in V1 or V2 and the largest S wave in the leads V5 or V6 and measure it. If the sum is more than 1.05 mV, then the Sokolow-Lyon index is positive. You almost made it. We've reached the last part. Now let's take a look at some cardiac arrhythmias. If the electrical excitation in the AV node is disturbed, an AV block is present. With the first-degree AV block, only the PR interval is extended to more than 200 milliseconds. This type is usually harmless. The second-degree AV block can be divided into two different types. If the PR interval becomes longer and longer until a QRS complex is missing, this is the Wenckebach type. This type is also often harmless. But if, for example, every second or third QRS complex is missing, although the PR interval remains the same, this is the Mobitz type. This type can be life-threatening. If the AV node no longer functions at all, the electrical signal is not transported to the ventricles. In the worst case, the heart will stop beating. However, it is also possible that another center in the ventricles starts to generate electrical impulses to prevent life-threatening cardiac arrest. In the ECG you will then see independent P waves and QRS complexes. Supraventricular extrasystole is a very common type of cardiac dysrhythmia and usually harmless. Somewhere in the atria an additional electrical impulse is generated and then causes an additional heartbeat, which looks almost like any other in the ECG. But if the additional impulse is generated in the ventricles, the QRS complex widens. Ventricular extrasystoles can also be harmless. Sometimes, however, they also occur as part of other heart diseases. Some people have an AV node with two conducting paths. Mostly they are asymptomatic. Occasionally, however, a circular excitation can occur. This corresponds to AV node reentry tachycardia. You can see the corresponding ECG on this slide. You can no longer detect typical P waves. Some people have another pathway in addition to the AV node that connects the atria to the ventricles. One of these syndromes is the WPW syndrome. It is also called preexcitation syndrome. Most of the time these patients are also asymptomatic. However, an electrical signal can sometimes go in circles. Then the patients become tachycardic. If the circular excitation uses the AV node to enter the ventricles, the QRS complexes in the ECG are narrow. However, if the additional conduction path is used to transport the electrical signal into the ventricles, broad QRS complexes are seen in the ECG. Above left, a typical delta wave is shown. Patients with a WPW syndrome classically show such an ECG in the asymptomatic phase. On the other hand, in the lower right you see the tachycardic form with narrow QRS complexes. Atrial fibrillation is a form of cardiac dysrhythmia in which uncoordinated and rapid excitation of the atria occurs. These electrical impulses are only irregularly transported to the ventricles. This results in an absolute arrhythmia in the ECG. For this reason, the QRS complexes appear only irregularly. In between we see many of the so-called flicker waves. Atrial flutter is a similar disorder. However, only every second or third atrial excitation, for example, is transmitted to the ventricles, so that the ECG shows a rhythmic picture. This is the corresponding ECG. Patients with serious heart disease, e.g. coronary heart disease, may suddenly develop ventricular tachycardia. This cardiac dysrhythmia originates in the ventricles themselves and can cause patients to lose consciousness. Also, the ventricular flutter is similar. In the ECG we detect high-amplitude waves that hardly resemble the normal QRS complex. The ventricular flutter can turn into life-threatening ventricular fibrillation. Coordinated excitation is no longer visible in this ECG. Finally, we come to the QT interval. It is measured from the beginning of the Q wave to the end of the T wave. It is always assessed in relation to the prevailing heart rate. If you are active in sports, for example, the QT interval is naturally shortened a little. However, if the frequency-corrected QT interval is too long or too short, this may be an indication of structural heart disease. However, some drugs can also lead to a change in the QT interval. That was it for this tutorial. I hope the video helped you. In the commentary section I will answer your questions. See you.